By the power of YouTube, I have the power to do this review. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It has certainly been a while. Well, if you didn't figure it out from the intro, today we're reviewing Masters of the Universe. I just got back from seeing it, and I'm gonna go ahead and just spill the bag here. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was great. A solid 7 out of 10 for me, but we're gonna go through each part, talk about what was really good, talk about some things where I thought there were some missteps, but we're really gonna parse out what's going on with Masters of the Universe. And so if you don't want it spoiled, this is pretty fresh in theaters, but just look away now. But come back after you've seen it, okay? So this is a really good movie for us to pick back up where we are in terms of doing reviews of shows and movies, because the last thing we did was One Piece live action, and that itself was an adaptation, just like Masters of the Universe is an adaptation of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon from the 1980s. So full disclosure, I'm not from the 1980s. I was born in 1990, but I did grow up watching a lot of these cartoons with my dad and my uncle, things getting exposed to, whether it was reruns on Boomerang or just hanging out and watching it with them. If my uncle, because like my uncle has the entire Transformers series on DVD. We did, that, Transformers. Voltron was actually my favorite. Then we also did He-Man, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, other things like that. So this was a lot of fun for me. I knew a lot of what was going on. I probably don't remember as much as I should have, because it's been a long time since I've actually seen the animation from back in the 80s, but I do know it is a lot of fun. So if you got young kids and they're looking for something to watch out there, I definitely highly recommend checking it out. But when we talk about adaptations, one of the things that I kept hammering home during the One Piece review was that you have to make sure that you're respecting the source material. There has to be a natural progression from the page or the smaller screen to the larger screen, or from the page to the smaller screen, whatever it is. You need to honor what the original source material was. Now, I'm going to be honest, I hold One Piece to a slightly higher standard than Masters of the Universe, and don't come after me for that if you're a super big He-Man fan. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great. I just think One Piece has a lot more potential. I think there's a lot more depth and a lot more story. I'm not saying that Masters of the Universe doesn't have all these things, but I probably judge One Piece a little harsher than, say, I'm going to judge Masters of the Universe, and I'm fully aware of that. So if any of this review comes across as either hypocritical, or maybe you're like, you would have really gotten mad at this versus what you did for One Piece, I understand. But I feel more vested in One Piece, and I really do just think there's a lot more that you can tell. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let Masters of the Universe get away with some of the things that they did. But honestly, they did a lot of things really well. So what we can all tell from the trailer is that Adam spends the first part of his life on planet Earth versus on Eternia. Now, I thought this was kind of strange going into it. I know my uncle really didn't like that idea when he first saw the trailer, but he and I went tonight. He really enjoyed himself. I enjoyed myself. So they did a pretty good job of taking Adam out of Eternia, but then putting him back at a time where he's actually grown up without the guidance and counsel of King Randor and Man-at-Arms and these other characters who are going to impart wisdom and demonstrate what proper leadership looks like throughout the rest of the film and for that little bit of the early part of his life. But so it makes more sense for where Adam is, both in terms of his ability to lead, but also his view of himself and what his expectations are. So I thought that actually played pretty well into it. There's a lot of really fun beats on Earth as well. There's a few that don't well. I didn't like the cops. The first cop, he makes a really funny remark, and then the second cop absolutely fumbled the bag. But there's a lot of really funny stuff that happened, especially because the whole time Adam is on planet Earth, he does not stop talking about Eternia. He refuses to pretend Eternia didn't happen. he is all in on, yeah, that's where I'm from. I need to get back. I want to go home. And that was actually really endearing to see him not just pretend to be an Earthling. Like, no, he fully well told everybody, like, no, I am from another planet. I am only here until I find my sword and I can go home. Now, he did kind of keep that under wraps for some people because it let him get a job, but there's a lot of people he was open to. Even the joke, there's a great joke at the beginning where he tells the entire story of how Skeletor essentially comes to power in Eternia and he has to flee to the first date. So it's stuff like that that plays into the whole overarching story of what is going to happen with Adam in this film. I will say it was nice though to see they put him on Earth because it was preparing us for what was fantastical about Eternia. And this is one of the things that I thought was actually a falter with the film that could have been done really well. So, of course, everybody has funny, silly names. It was the 1980s. We understand. But when you watch the He Man cartoon, even though it's a little campy and goofy, remember, this is made for children, not full grown adults, not people who are really thinking and diving deep. It was made for kids, and it was made during a time frame where this sort of thing wasn't awkward or weird. So the fact that they constantly had to make jokes about the names, that did wear a little thin, but they did show some reverence towards some of the names. They never made a joke about the name Skeletor. They never made a joke about Man at Arms. Really, they took a lot of respect with the name Man of Arms. Took respect with Castle Grayskull, with what Adam has to say in order to transform into He-Man when he says, you know, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power. They didn't try to parse that out. Now, they did use it for some jokes, and I think the jokes they used it for worked better because they weren't making fun of it, they were making fun with it. They had him kind of change the phrase a little bit to reflect essentially what Adam wants, and those were some pretty good jokes, but they obviously made jokes about the other character names, Trapjaw, you know, Mechanic, these other characters that have these outlandish names. And yeah, they're a little silly, but again, this is the 1980s and it was made for children. I think a lot of people forgot of that. That's kind of why I didn't like a lot of the over the top swearing. I knew it was going to be very action packed, and I'm okay. I didn't think it was overly bloody or anything, but there were a few curse words in there that I was like, I'm going to have to wait to show this to my kids. But, you know, overall, I thought they did a pretty good job of saying, yes, 80s was very different time, but we can really show some honor to some of these things. But they did throw a lot of punches at it, and I feel like what they could have done better was say, hey, we're on Earth. These things don't make sense, so the people here make fun of it. But then once you get to Eternia, everything there is respected. Yeah, these names that people probably scoff at nowadays, these things have meaning. They're purposeful. So I kind of would have liked to see that a little more. But we were on Earth for a very small amount of time, really, and I'm very happy about that. I'm glad we didn't have to watch Adam grow up and all this stuff because it almost felt very Superman-ish, and I didn't really want to meet Ma and Pa He-Man or whatever. But they really flew through that. Beastman comes to look for him, and then he and Tila escape. She's the one that finds him. That's a really cool moment, getting to see the two of them reunite. So I thought that was fine for him to be on Earth. Some things that are really interesting, they did a really good job with how Eternia looks. Obviously, you get to see it in all of its glory with all its different environments and everything. At the start of the film, Skeletor takes over, and then when Adam comes back, everything is destroyed, and obviously he has to help stop Skeletor and rebuild civilization, which they do by the end of the film. You get to see everything back on the mend, which I understand they're very technologically advanced, but 6 months to fix all that damage? Tell the federal government to call those people. They clearly know what they're doing because the way they're doing stuff now, ah, no, these contractors, no, scam of money. But the world building was done really well. You could see all these different environments, you could see these different buildings. It blended this futuristic technology and this old school battle with swords and axes very well. It was a good mishmash of these different genres that the cartoon did really well, and I was very happy to see them lay into that very hard. Now, when we talk about the different characters, obviously we have the Rogues Gallery and the heroes, and I kind of want to talk about the heroes first, just because I know based on my One Piece review, there were some things that were negative, some things that were positive. I tend to linger on what's negative, so I think there's more negative with the heroes than there are with actually the villains and the rogues, so we'll kind of talk about that. So yeah, let's start with Adam, He-Man. I thought he was really great. He's a little more bumbly than he was in the original cartoon, but there's lots of really charming moments of him. He's very determined. He's very bought in. Obviously, he has this HR job here on Earth that has kind of colored some of his thinking, but he really learns to settle into himself. The character of Adam is a lot better at the end of the film than he was at the beginning. And obviously, the He Man character is interesting because he gets this power and he's doing all these different things with it that honestly he really wouldn't know how to do. Now, I'm not judging it too hard. They're not doing all this. You have to be trained and all this. He trained a little as a kid. He comes back. It's obviously the power of Grayskull. It's going to give him some wisdom powers, which I don't think they did very well in this film, but I'll just assume it gave him some combat knowledge. But he was able to effectively wield the sword and do what needed to be done. But he also wasn't perfect, and he needed time to come into who He-Man was. So He-Man is better at the end of the film than he was in the middle. They really did good things with his character, but like I mentioned, when the power, they took away the wisdom part. He's supposed to also have all this wisdom. He didn't really have that. And instead, all the wisdom is going to come from the other characters pouring into him, whether it was Man of Arms, King Randor, even the Sorceress. All these different characters impart wisdom, including, and again, spoiler, Dolph Lundgren, who shows up on the Earth part, which was super cool. He gives a bit of wisdom that actually plays out later on in the film. So the wisdom he has doesn't come from the power, it comes from the Adam side of things and him learning to grow into this character. So there's a lot of good there that I think you could do, but I do think that was a misstep to remove that from the power source, because especially there toward the end where the Sorceress describes that all the champions before were only about brute strength. They didn't care about strategy, they didn't care about decorum, values, justice, morals. So that was a little disappointing. So I think removing the wisdom wasn't good, but they did add some wisdom parts back in there. So I feel like it was good that they did it that way, but I'm really disappointed they didn't have that part of the power. Man at Arms is a lot of fun. I'm a big Idris Elba fan. There's not really a lot of movies I've seen of his where I don't like it. Maybe just the Fast and Furious film, what is it, the Shaw, the one with Rock and Statham. Maybe that, but I thought this was a really good portrayal of Man at Arms. They had him get beat early on in the film, and he doesn't get over it. And that's the one part of the character I didn't like, was that he didn't get over it. However, he gets his hope back when he finds Adam again, or more like Adam finds him. And you get to see this more hopeful Man at Arms, and then he gets to start teaching Adam and showing him the things that he should have shown him before. So that was actually done pretty well. Like I said, I didn't like the whole I'm kind of a drunk loser because I got beat once, but he did lose in front of his daughter. The king and queen got captured. Adam had to go into exile. So because of what they did, I can understand why they did the character that way, but it is Man at Arms. I would have liked to see him a bit more dialed in, maybe running the resistance himself while the other characters are, assisting him. I thought Tila was fine. I thought she did a pretty good job with her character. She was there. There's a really funny moment where she friend zones Adam, and it was one of the best parts of the movie in terms of humor. From the action sequence, she wasn't too over the top. She had a good power thing. I did think it was weird that her fight with Evelyn at the end, they just both kind of stopped fighting at one point to watch He-Man and Skeletor fight, but I guess that does kind of make sense. That's what you're all there for. That's what we were all there for. So that was a little strange, but she was really good. She played with all the other characters well. On-screen chemistry was good. I thought the Tila character was really well done, and she does wear her traditional "this is what I had on in the cartoon" at the very end of the film. And that's a great moment with the heroes where they do the kind of fake laugh setup like they would at the end of the animated show. And me and my uncle were just losing it the whole time, thinking this is one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. So the other characters like Ram Man and Fisto, and yes, they took a lot of time to make fun of the name Fisto, a lot, but they did a good job of it most of the time. There were a few jokes that fell flat, but Fisto was a cool character. Ram Man was a cool character. I personally thought Mechanic was the best of them, and he probably got less on screen time, but his power was really cool, whipping his head around and all the things that he did. They really put them in there and had them fight. They had a purpose, and yeah, you don't get to see them as much as He-Man and Man at Arms, but they laid a lot of breadcrumbs to say that this could happen in the future. I do think that they kind of got the Warriors 3 treatment like the Thor movies, but I'm really hopeful that in the next film that they do, they don't have that problem. They're more involved because now we don't have to spend all this time following Adam across the universe, getting refound and everything there, and then finding Roboto, which was really funny. She was a good part of the film, but I'm really hopeful that all of those characters are more involved because it really was mainly Adam, Tila, Man at Arms, and then Roboto. They even had Dion in the film, which was really interesting because normally she serves under Tila, but she really didn't do that here. But again, they're all disheveled. You know, the Kingdom of Eternos is all just kind of destroyed. But she was pretty good, very funny. They did focus on her fighting a lot at the end more, and I was like, I kind of want to see the Mechanic guy, but it didn't really bother me too much. It didn't do anything wrong with the film. She is pretty funny. So that's it for the heroes, really. But then the Rogues Gallery is where we have all the fun. And by all the fun, I mean Skeletor. But first, we'll talk about everybody else. But Beastman was interesting. He's a little more snivelly than I feel like he was in the original cartoon. Then we got like Trapjaw. So Trapjaw's huge in this film. He's the one that hands Man at Arms his first defeat. And then they fight towards the end, which actually that fight was kind of anticlimactic. It was cool to see Man at Arms get his moment, but I wish it lasted a little longer. But Trapjaw was done pretty well. The Rogues Gallery does decently well. Then you get Evelyn. Evelyn was a really fun character. She was done well. She kept that kind of, here's this raspy campiness in my voice to match that old 80s timbre, and I really enjoyed that character. It was very fun. She was clearly ultimately dedicated to Skeletor, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with her in the future. They showed off her powers a little bit. Really, the only power they showed off was her ability to freeze people, but they did a good job with her. But the main event of the whole film is Skeletor. Holy cow, Skeletor is the funniest character in the film. He's the most imposing character in the film, and honestly, it felt like he was the perfect foil to Adam and He-Man. That the whole time we want to see Adam succeed, we want to see Skeletor fail. But there's a part of us that goes, we hope he fails, but we hope he's around for most of this film. And he was. He's around for almost the entirety of the film, and they hint that he's coming back at the very end. But Jared Leto knocked this out of the park. I know he's had a lot of bad films lately, the last, 20 years or so? But he's had some good films in there too, and I think this was probably his best one. He committed. There's one thing you can never say that Jared Leto doesn't commit to whatever role it is. The way he committed, his over-the-topness, the voice, just the way the character plays, the best part of the film. And he was evil from start to finish. We knew who the bad guy was. We knew what needed to happen to Skeletor. There was no wishy-washiness. There was no, can we save him, can't we save him? They actually joke about this early in the film, that it's like, no, he has a skeleton for a face. He's the bad guy. He was the bad guy, and man, did he enjoy this role. So Skeletor has a lot of great moments. There's some iffy parts, like why didn't he kill Prince Adam, after Prince Adam has to watch King Randor die? Why didn't he just kill King Randor and the Queen really early on? Not sure. He does appear to like slave labor, but he also likes to torture people. That's kind of my idea behind it, is that he likes to watch people suffer. So he kept the King and Queen alive to watch them suffer as the kingdom fell apart. But though it would have been nice to kind of see them keep hope and not just kind of be a bane to Skeletor throughout. But outside of that, that's probably why he kept Prince Adam alive, was purely on the intention of torturing him by making him watch Skeletor become the most powerful person in the universe. So then we get to the climax, the fight between He-Man and Skeletor. And Skeletor has his moment. He thinks he's won, which happens in every film. But then, of course, He-Man gets the better of him. And this fight is super cool. It's way too short. I've noticed this is a trend with a lot of films, though. They give you all this great action in the middle. He-Man's fight with the entirety of the Rogues Gallery early on, before he actually fights Skeletor, and before he even watches his father die. That fight is great. Other fights in the film are great. The fight in the spaceship before they even go see Skeletor, that's great. And then the fight with Skeletor is also great, but it's too short. I feel like they really could have hung out there longer and had a lot of fun with it, but they did a good job. It really sold us that Skeletor is this irredeemable evil. He is the bad guy. You have to look at him this way. Adam is a force for good in the universe. He wants to see good things happen, though I wish that once he essentially got the power at the very end, because he has it through a lot of the movie, but once he gets it back at the very end, I would have liked to have seen him already understand that Skeletor is irredeemable, but I understand why they did it. I see kind of the points they're playing at to make you understand how irredeemable Skeletor is, but juxtapose him and Adam. I didn't think that was fully necessary, but it does a good job of presenting us that He-Man is good. He and his side are good. Skeletor is evil. There's nothing he has. There's no motivation. There's nothing you can identify with Skeletor. So everyone has the same person to root against in this film. And that's something that's been missing from films for a long time. Nobody wants to commit to a villain. Every villain just has to be misunderstood, or he's actually got a good idea about what he wants to do, but he's going about it the wrong way. No, not every villain is morally gray. There is good and there is evil. We all know these things. So having a traditionally evil character who relishes in his evilness, and it's not even that he thinks he's right or righteous. No, he knows he's evil and he pursues that. And so juxtaposing him against Adam, who knows what's right, who knows the good things, and having them fight is really, really well done and well needed in this day and age of just kind of gray, what's gonna happen, everybody's a bad guy, everybody's a good guy films that, I don't really enjoy and don't really teach us or guide us. And no, films don't have to teach you anything, but if you're going to be entertained and someone's going to put a message in it, at least put a message in there that's hopeful, because if the message is everybody's gray, so you don't actually know who the bad guy is. But if you put a message in there and go, no, there are things that are clearly evil, clearly good, stay on the side of clear good, fight against clear evil, that's a win-win if you ask me. So that's it with all the characters. The story was pretty good. It had a very quick pace. It didn't feel slow or muddled. It makes the most of its 2 hours and 20-minute runtime, which is really cool if you think about it. A lot of films that do this, they don't really feel like they've done a good job of filling the time or not overstretching or underdeveloping parts, but this movie does a pretty good job. If only the final fight had been extended by a couple of minutes, really shown off Adam versus Skeletor. And they really show that once He-Man understands the power and he fights Skeletor, Skeletor is no match. Evil is no match for good. And that is perfect. If he had beat up on him a little more, or maybe let Skeletor get some shots in and show, you can't damage me, there's nothing to do. But for everyone who's seen the film, you know that there's actually two parts to the fight. And part two is really the giant climax of the film. And I wish it had gone a little longer. But the film does a good job with everything else. The pacing is good. The lines are good. There's a lot of jokes that fall flat, though. There's some jokes that really get you. They're well timed. They're done well. A lot of them are done by Skeletor. Some of them are done by Man-at-Arms. There's some great jokes between Adam and Teela. Again, Skeletor does the majority of the jokes that are great. But then there's some that just fall flat. And everybody has them, including Skeletor. So it's not a perfect movie by any stretch, especially in the comedy area. The CG is a little underdeveloped in some places. A lot of places it's really, really good. There's some places where it's a lot of motion, and I understand, like, if you're on the back of Battle Cat, or well, he's technically not Battle Cat, and he's just Cringer because he doesn't have the armor, but you get the idea. And some of the moving where He-Man is on top of spaceships and things looks a little janky, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. And like I said, the world building outside of, and I don't just mean like development of characters and story, I mean like actual development in the rendering system of the world they live in is pretty good. So I enjoyed that. So again, is this a perfect one-to-one adaptation of the cartoon to here? No. Do I think this needed to be? No. And again, I understand if some people think that's hypocritical. I'll own that. I just think that Masters of the Universe had a lot of stories. It was a tell by tell story, and yeah, there's a whole history and mythos and everything going on behind it. I'm not trying to deny that. I'm just saying I feel like this was another installment. Kind of like how Transformers has multiple installments of different shows. Same thing with Voltron. Voltron had, Voltron, the cars one. I mean, I guess we can talk about that. I don't really consider that Voltron, but it's still, you had that. So this kind of feels like that to me. And maybe that's, again, me not treating this the same way I treated One Piece. Like I'm treating this with a little bit of kids love, but I had fun the whole time, and I'm not super engrossed in the He-Man mythos, but I know enough to know that yeah, there's some things they definitely changed. There's some things that they should have been more reverent about, like the names. There's some things that they should have really laid into more and let the cheese factor build up, but this film does a good job at telling the story they wanted to tell, making you understand the He-Man characters. My cousins were with us, and they are all born post 2000s, and so they really liked the film. It was their first exposure. They enjoyed it. A lot of people in the theater enjoyed it. Nobody was really complaining, and I thought that was really cool because a lot of times we just walk away complaining. Now nobody's going to say this is a great film. It's a good film. It's a enjoyable film. It's something to kind of take your mind off things and just watch some action, get involved. There's not a lot of depth to it, but I think that's okay for what they were going for. I think this movie's a solid 7 out of 10. But don't just take my word for it. Go see it. I think it's definitely worth seeing in the theaters. All the color, the spectacle, I do think this is one that you can pay the money for the ticket price. If you don't, though, I definitely understand. It'll be on Prime eventually at some point since Amazon did the film. But that's your choice if you want to wait till it's on Amazon. I totally understand. But I think this one's definitely worth going out to the theater because not a lot of movies out that are. I know a lot of people are enjoying Back Rooms right now and Obsession. So those are some that you should maybe check out. I'm not a big horror movie guy, so I'm not going to check them out. But I've heard a lot of good things. But yeah, tell me if you haven't seen it and maybe you stopped because you didn't want spoilers, you come back, you watch it, and now you wanted to see kind of my thoughts about it. Well, go ahead, let me know what you thought down in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. So why don't you go ahead, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you in the next one. Wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath in.